On a Gen 8 and a Galar. This game will be a monster, so I will kind of try to go through it as rapid as possible. Milo, first gym leader. Glossifer isn't actually that great. Its stats are very, very poor for this special point in the game especially, but the Dynamax Eldegoss is actually quite good. Nestle is not overly good aside from, of course, her Dreadnought, which is quite powerful. Goldeen's moves are not especially great, and Aerocuda is not either. It's a strong attack stat, but Aqua Jet is just not really doing enough. The Dreadnought makes up for it with being fantastic. However, because Swift Swim paired up with, of course, Max Geyser's Rain, it is very good at doing this. Kabu is actually very solid, because Ninetales and Arcanine do have very good stats to this point, even if their stabs are not overly great. Flame Wheel is not actually too low base power for this point in the game, considering, of course, the stats, and Intimidate is fantastic. The Gmax Centiskorch is fantastic. Coil is great for boosting up its stats, and two moves are actually a very great power. Its bulk is also very good, and it does have a very, very good attack stat. In Sword, you fight Bia, or B, who has a pretty good hit on top, and its Technician is actually quite good. Pangoro is not bad, and it does deal with Psychic types exceptionally well as Ghost types, and it can take a hit. Surfetched, very good. Strong stats, good moves, and also great coverage. Machamp Gmax is not overly fantastic. Gmax Key Strike is not that strong. This is because Max Knuckle has a very low base power compared to other Max moves, and unlike that, it doesn't boost attack, it just makes its critical hits more likely. Knockoff is good for counters, but it doesn't exactly do all that much damage considering it drops special defense. But Machamp does have a very good attack, and of course the boosted critical hit chance is actually quite good. Alistair is fought in Shield, and Galarian Yamask is actually bulky a little bit for being an unevolved Pokemon. Even if it isn't great, it can at least take a hit. Mimikyu, though, very solid. It does have some pretty good bulk, good attacker, and of course, Disguise is fantastic to set up well. Cursola is very interesting. It is physically extremely glassy, but Hex is absurdly powerful because it's coming off a base 145 special attack stat. It's also great speed and great special defense. Now, his Gengar, which is a menace. It is extremely fast, great special attacks, and Max Ooze Venoshock will boost its special attack power even further. Opal's Galarian Weezing is not especially great, and Mawile is much of the same. Intimidate is nice, but its moves are not great. Togekiss, though, is actually very good. It is bulky, it is fast, and Air Slash and Draining Kiss are not terrible. Alchemy is also actually quite good. It is very bulky, it does have very great special defense, and Gmax Finale will heal it for a good amount of damage. In Sword, Gordy is fought, and Barbarical is terrifying. It's slow enough to underspeed Pokemon, set up a Shell Smash, not take a whole lot of damage prior, Shell Smash, boost its speed, and outspeed Pokemon the next turn, with brutally powerful attacks. Its HP is going to be low regardless, so the defenses being dropped really don't matter. Though, speaking of high defenses and low HP, Shuckle sucks. Its defenses are sky high, but its HP is so low it doesn't even matter because they negate one another. This kind of min-maxing is not good. Its moves are also very terrible. Stonejourner isn't bad. Physically it is very good, but specially it's not. It's not the greatest in terms of moves though. But Gmax Colossal is a very strong finisher. It is very bulky, and Gmax Vocalist set damage at the end of every turn is very, very powerful. In Shield, Melanie is fought, and Frostmoth is very good. It's not the fastest thing, nor is it the greatest special attacker in the world, but it does have a very decent Bug Buzz, and Icy Wind is actually quite good for dropping speed. Galarian Darmanitan is a monster. It is fast, crazy strong with its attack stat, great moves, and it is able to survive a hit, but at very low HP, allowing it to go into Zen mode, which makes it faster and even harder hitting, and also more terrifying. Ice Skew is also very good. It's also got Freeze Dry for hitting water types seeking to, of course, wall ice types easily, which it can't do because again, Freeze Dry. Gmax Lapras is her closer, and this thing G-Max Resonance setting a Roarveil on top of Lapras's naturally amazing Bolt on top of the Dynamax double HP. This thing is terrifying. Very, very bulky. Pierce is the 7th gym leader, and he's actually not overly great. Sure, he has some Pokemon with some decent moves, and the Pokemon that are themselves kind of decent, but overall, they're just decent. They don't really have the greatest of things they could be doing, and the Pokemon themselves are not overly great. Obstagoon is actually quite good. It is bulky, and if it can get off an obstruct block and then go for an attack, it will be very strong in terms of the damage it's dealing, but that's really all it has. Last up, we have Raihan in a double battle. Sandstream Gigalith is a fantastic Pokemon lead. Bulky, great stats, excellent special defensive boost on top of that, great body press. Flygon has great coverage, and Breaking Swipe does do a great job of crippling physical attackers. Sandaconda isn't great, but it's not terrible. Glare support is actually quite solid, and the G-Max Duraludon is a solid Pokemon with an excellent type combination. It is quite fast, especially for what you would expect, and it can physically be very imposing with the fact that it does have Max Steel Spike to boost physical defense, and Max Knuckle to boost its attacking power. It can set up and do a lot of damage this way, as it can also really easily set up because it actually has the bulk and type combination to do that, because again, it is a G-Max. Hop is, amusingly, the most fought rival in the entire series, so let's hop to it. For the first time, we are actually covering the first rival battle, and this is actually because Hop has 2 Pokemon in this fight. He has his Wooloo and his starter. I mean, it doesn't really make much of a difference, they're both not overly strong, but it is something. Second fight, he's actually mostly the exact same as the first one, but now he has added a Rookidee, which is actually a bit decent for this point in the game. Third fight is pretty much just an upscaled second fight, so not much needs to be said here. The fourth, it is quite good. Corvus Squire is not bad, and his starter is very good for this point in the game. Fifth fight, Cramorant is actually quite strong for this point. Toxel is, though, very weak. Silicobra is actually bulky, and it does have some decent moves, but again, starter is quite strong. Sixth, Trevenant, solid. Heatmore is actually pretty strong as well for this point with some pretty decent moves. Snorlax is a very bulky beast. Bullhund, though, it does have a nice paralysis tech, but it is pretty frail other than that, and it's not overly strong. But its starter, again, is pretty good. Seventh fight, Dubwool, not bad, but not great. It can take a hit, but its moves aren't overly great in return. Corviknight, solid, bulky, good attacking stats for that bulk, and Drillpeck is solid. Same cannot be said for Pincurchin, though. Snorlax and the starter, both still very solid. 8 is strictly an upgraded version of the 7th. Everything is just better in move, save for Snorlax. He will also Dynamax his starter. His 9th battle, again, upgraded 8th with Cramorant. 10th fight, this is where things actually get real. In Sword, he gets the Zamazenta. In Shield, Zacian, in place of Cramorant. And both are terrifying. The rest of his team is the same. The 11th in the Champion Stadium, his team is the 10th with no Pincurchin, and instead Gigantamaxing his Corviknight. In the Galarian Star Tournament, he will have the G-Max of whatever his starter is, the opposite legendary, and the Dubwool from prior fights. BD next. First battle is actually quite strong for this point in the game. All of his Pokemon are actually quite good in terms of stats, and Solosis is terrifying with actually pretty good bulk and 105 attack, special attack with stab for this point. The second fight, it does hold up pretty well for most of his team, and they're still able to do solid work. They're able to hold up quite well considering they are evolved as well, and they are also quite strong for this point. Duosian is very bulky, and both it and Gothorita can do some great damage with their moves. The same applies to Hetrem, while they also take hits quite well. The fourth fight, Mawile isn't terrible. It does have Intimidate, which is good, and at least attack do have stab, so it can do something, but it isn't overly great. Gardevoir is a bit on the frail side, but it still can do some great damage with Calm Mind, and 2 great stabs. Galarian Rapidash is fast, it can take a hit, and it has an okay physical attack. His G-Max Hatterene, though, is terrifying, as it's naturally very bulky as it is. It has great moves, paired of course with setting Psychic Terrain or G-Max Smite, confusing you. The fifth fight is a slight change to the fourth one. Fake Tears on Marlow is actually a pretty good setup for the allies to take advantage. Gardevoir has lost Calm Mind, Wish, but it has gained some good damage moves. Rapidash has a better moveset, and Hatterene has the same thing as before. This Champion Cup team is a combo of both 4 and 5. Gardevoir's a much more aggressive moveset, the same with Rapidash. Sylveon is tacked with screen support, and G-Max Hatterene is again still solid. The Galarian Star team uses the Mawile, Rapidash, and Hatterene of his 6 team. Up next, we have Marnie. Rogue and Scraggy are actually quite decent for this point in the game. They do have decent stats, and their moves are actually quite good. Same for Morpeko, with a very good stab bite for this point in the game, and it's naturally very good stats. Second fight, Lifeguard, terrible. Both Toxicroak and Scrafty are actually quite decent, but Morpeko has fallen off fast. It's not too hard hitting for its low bulk by this point. Third, Lifeguard is again bad, but at least Snarl is decently okay. Sadly, Toxicroak has gotten much worse, losing Poison Jab, and Scrafty is okay, but Morpeko still is falling off. But the Grimmsnarl, it is very good. She can be rematched in Spikemuth, and her team is just a wholesale upgrade, better moves all around. Her Champion Cut team is identical to her Spikemuth team, just of course with the G-Max Grimmsnarl, and her Galarian Star team is a combination of Morpeko, G-Max Grimmsnarl, and the Scrafty. Macrocosmos Oleon is up next, leading off with her Frostlass. It's not terrible, it is glassy, yes, but it does have some good tech. Will-O-Wisp Double Team is very good for damage mitigation and avoidance, letting it last a little longer than it realistically should, and Icy Wind and Hex do actually pair very well, allowing it to do some tech and some good damage, while also crippling targets. Serena is actually decently bulky, and Dropkick is again good for crippling physical attackers, and its other moves are actually not terrible. Salazzle is not overly great. Its moves are not too strong, and it doesn't really have the bulk to do Poison, Venoshock, Stall spam. Her Milotic, though, is very solid. Competitive is a great ability, and it has a superb stall moves in Aqua Ring and Recover with its great natural bulk and Surf. An excellent Garbodor, G-Max is very good on it, considering it is an interestingly bulky Pokemon with Malodor always causing poison. It's naturally actually quite bulky. It also does have Stomping Tantrum for, of course, boosting its special defense. It can do actually pretty decently. It's not overly great, but it isn't terrible. After that, you face Chairman Rose. Escavalier is fantastic. It has an excellent type combination. It has great stabs and great moves, with Swords Dance allowing it to set it up and be bulky with great damage. Ferrothorn, defensive beast. Curse, Body Press pairs extremely well. Its other moves also just pair extremely well with that Curse setup. Berserker is the damage powerhouse. It has some very good moves, especially boosted by Tough Claws. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but it definitely can do some great damage. Clank Clank is bulky. It can very easily set up a shift gear and become terrifying, since it again is naturally quite bulky, and again, steel types can't take it quite well. Last up is his Copper Raja, G-Max Copper Raja. It is a brutal heavy slam with sheer force boosting. It actually can do very good damage with its other moves. Steel Surge also provides an entry hazard for switch-ins. Not bad. Max Quake can help it shore up its special defense and give some decent counter coverage. Next is the Eternatus fight, faced in the third battle. This is really the weird case of it. Technically is a capture legendary, as after you beat it you get to catch it, but you have to actually KO it in order to catch it. It's kind of weird. So we're kind of going under the same way as we had the Eternatus thing. We're going under the Eternatus thing we had for Kyurem and Necrozma, where you do actually have to knock the thing out, so we are considering it. Eternamex Eternatus is colossally bulky. It has 252 HP and both defenses, and stellar offensive stats in the hundreds for these stats. It also has very good moves. Even when this thing is facing a 4-on-1 with you, Hop, and the two dogs, it's not exactly an easy fight. Now, with those done, we can move on to the Elite Four's replacement, the Champion Cup. Nessa is the first of the gym leaders faced here. Golisopod is terrifying. It has great bulk, great offenses, and just really strong stabs, plus Shadow Claw for great coverage. Very good. Next up is her Pelipper. Pelipper with the Drizzle setup, and it's not really overly strong in and of itself, but it's meant to support the team with, of course, Tailwind and that Rain power, which it can do extremely well. Rain actually segues very well to her next Pokemon, Bataskuta. This is a brutal Rain Sweeper, with of course Rain setup and Stab Liquidation. On top of its other moves, which are very competent, yes, it is glassy, and yeah, Ice Fang isn't the most powerful, but it's still incredibly solid. Her Seeking is a bit of a lesser version of her Bataskuta. It has lesser powerful moves, slower, but it does have much better bulk, well, a slightly better bulk. So, it isn't actually terrible. And then up last is her G-Max Dreadnought, which is quite a force. It is bulky, it also does have very good moves for when it is G-Max. Next, in Sword, you face B, Alistair in Shield. B's Hawlucha is not great. High Jump Kick, it is very strong, but it's the only thing it actually has. Grapple Lock isn't terrible. Auto Lock is actually a very great move, but Submission and everything else isn't great. Surfetched, it is quite strong, but it is rather slow. Phalanx, great, especially with no retreat, buffing all of its stats, never a bad option. It is also decently fast. G-Max Machamp is not overly stellar, but also isn't terrible. Again, we've been over this before. It is able to take hits quite well. It is very strong. It has good moves. G-Max Key Strike does boost, of course, critical hit ratio. There's good, there's bad. It's, again, a bit of a mixed bag. Alistair's Dusknoir is great in its bulk. Sure, Shadow Punch is not overly strong, but it is able to do at least some damage, while at least being able to bulk out well. Chandelure, though, solidly strong. Same of Cursola. They're glassy to a degree, but they definitely hit pretty hard. And of course, G-Max Gengar, we've been over. Strong, fast, can buff itself, and do great damage. Last, you face Raihan. This time he has a Torkoal with a solid lead off with Solar Beam and Lava Plume with Yawn and Body Press. Excellent moves that are all very solid. Guja will shift the weather over to Rain now, and it does so very well. It actually has a very good moveset for being used in Rain, even if it isn't the best. Turtonator sends it back to Sun. It is solid on its own. Flygon shifts things into Sand, and it is actually decked out quite well for this. G-Max Duraludon, once again, it is also great. It is not the best, because again, special attacker, it is okay physically, but he at least does make a good use of what it has for what it does. Now on to Leon. He will be using the starter Yours is weak to, and the fourth Pokemon weak to the starter of your picking. His leadoff is great with Aegislash. His second is also equally so with Dragapult. Great moves all around, even if frail, it's quite good. Haxorus is also very fast and has some good, and at least has some backbone for its pretty great power. Mr. Rhyme is solid, it has very good moves, and Inteleon is also very great. Rhyperior is very bulky, and has a great with solid rock and brutal moves. Rillaboom is fantastic all around. Seismitoad, very solid, and Cinderace's moves are not overly strong outside of Pyroball and Acrobatics. But those two moves are very strong. And then, to close out, he has a G-Max Charizard, which definitely brings the fire. Fast, very good with Max Airstream to boost it even faster. Nuclear Fire Blast boosted into G-Max Wildfire for residual rack-up damage. G-Max Max Overgrow from Solar Beam for counter coverage, and while Ancient Power might be questionable, the other moves certainly are solid.